Alright, now we have Phase 5 of the DCEU project. First things first, we finally have the Nightwing movie. Here, it would be a lighter and more fun action movie. It wouldn't be like Deadpool, definitely not, but just an action movie with a lighter edge and more lighthearted. It would have dark elements in the villain Two-Face, who I chose since he wasn't showcased in the main Batman films, and he's too good of a villain not to show in great detail. I feel like making this a non-stop action fest similar to Shoot 'em Up would be really cool and interesting. It would serve in a weird, unofficial way as a pilot for the Batman-related show to be released this year, but we'll get to that in a second. It would be directed by Doug Liman and written by Jez and John Henry Butterworth. Next is Supergirl. I think you're going to begin noticing a theme here. In the film, we're going to have the origin story for Kara, more in tune with her Silver Age counterpart with some characteristics of her New 52 counterpart. It involves her landing on Earth, meeting Superman and becoming accustomed to life on Earth. It would involve the ins and outs of Kara becoming Supergirl and be more so focused on her, an alien, becoming accustomed to a different life than she once had. Mainly because this wasn't really featured in the Supergirl TV series, as it's more so a very human-like Kara becoming Supergirl, which I never found to be interesting. But, in terms of the movie, there are also many scenes with her and Superman growing accustomed to one another once more, as Superman is learning of life on Krypton and she is learning of life on Earth from him, as well as exploring Superman's morals and how it might be a bit different for her. I'm not hinting that she's going to be a bad guy or anything like that, just maybe seeing what makes heroes good and how she herself views that in a different way to Superman, if that makes sense. Like, they both have the same morals, but it might be interpreted by each person differently. She would eventually choose to become Supergirl and have to put an end to a parasite called World Killer 1, who takes over people and kills them, conquering many planets in many galaxies. It would be directed and co-written by Kelly Freeman Craig and co-written by Mark Andreyko. Next up is Wonder Girl. This film would involve Donna Troy investigating Baroness Paula von Gunther, who wants to try and ignite a Fourth Reich and take over America. Cheetah would be used in a fight in the beginning of the film, with Wonder Woman making a cameo. It would involve Donna, after a couple of years being Supergirl, growing a bit tired of being in Wonder Woman's shadow and wanting to be her own hero, as well as her still struggling with the aftermath of her being Cersei's puppet for so long, and befriending Cassie Sandsmark, and them defeating Gunther together. At the end of the film, she would leave behind her role as Wonder Girl and pass it to Cassie while she becomes Darkstar. It would be directed by Kimberly Pierce and written by Patty Jenkins. Next up is the Bat Family. Alright, so here is what I was talking about in terms of the Batman-related TV show entitled The Bat Family. It would involve the adventures of various members of the Bat Family battling famous or non-famous villains. It could adapt various Batman stories told from the Bat Family's point of view and that sort of thing. The first season would begin with the initial cast of Nightwing, Batgirl, Robin, Alfred, and Catwoman. Throughout the ongoing seasons, in total there would be 5, more and more Bat Family members would be added, like Spoiler, Batwoman, Cassandra Cain, Batwing, Huntress, and some others. It would also feature minor characters like Lucius Fox, Harold Allnut, Julia Pennyworth, and some others tied to the Batman continuity. The series finale would involve Batman retiring from crime fighting. The showrunners would be Guillermo del Toro and Jesse Armstrong. Next up is Easy Company. So here's a bit of a change of pace. It would be a war show following the various missions of Sergeant Rock and the Easy Company. It would be similar in tone to something like Band of Brothers of the Pacific, a realistic and gritty tone with maybe some fantastical elements sprinkled throughout. The showrunner would be Craig Silverstein. Next up is Tempest. Bit of a simpler one, but a couple years after the events of Aquaman 3, Garth, now known as Tempest, has to fight the villain Deadwater. Dolphin is also a major character. Aquaman would have a bit of a bigger role than in the other Sidekick spin-off films, and would be that necessary father figure needed for Garth to become a better hero. The director would be Dan Trachtenberg and written by Will Beall. Next up is Kid Flash, another simple one. This involves Wally being pretty good with his powers and saving the day from milder threats. However, that changes when Frankie Kane, his ex-girlfriend, gains magnetic powers and becomes Magenta. So we have Magenta coming after Wally, who is now also dating Linda Park, and Kid Flash, as both of his worlds are now colliding. It also has Wally learning from the Speed Force in his spiritual sense and becoming a better hero because of it. It would be directed by Chris Columbus and written by John Francis Daly and Jonathan Goldstein. Next is Miss Martian. This has McGann dealing with her life on Earth as a white Martian and having a shaky relationship with John. Due to the fact that the majority of white Martians were seen as evil monsters by the Green Martians, her relationship with John is uncomfortable for the both of them, as well as John finally having a daughter figure in his life but doesn't know how to handle it. The basis and heart of the movie would be around them and trying to deal with their issues. There would of course be a regular villain in Ben Burns, an evil Green Martian, showcasing that both sides of Martians have their bad eggs and no side should be seen as totally evil or totally good. It would be written by Christina Hodson and directed by Travis Knight. Next up is Green Lantern Corps: The New Recruits. Now we have the third and final Green Lantern show. The first season initially follows John Stewart and Guy Gardner rebuilding the Green Lantern Corps with the help of the Dark Stars and what's left of the Guardians, with Kyle Rayner on Earth fighting medium-level threats. They eventually send another ring to Earth where it chooses Simon Baz, who would get an origin episode prior to this. Then for the rest of the season, the narrative follows both Stewart and Gardner rebuilding the Corps, and Rayner training Baz while also stopping various threats. Not just on Earth, but other planets in the 2814 sector as well. The final episode involves Power Ring from Earth 3 escaping prison, dying, and his ring being transferred to Jessica Cruz, who is corrupted by the ring and goes on a rampage. At the end of the season, she becomes a Green Lantern. This leads to Kyle training the both of them in Season 2, while Stewart and Gardner continue rebuilding, but more of a focus on Rayner, Baz, and Cruz. Then finally in Season 3, the show predominantly follows Baz and Cruz as Green Lanterns on Earth, as well as on other planets in the sector. The showrunners would once again be Johns and Moore. Next up is Arkham Asylum. This isn't going to be an adaptation of A Serious House on a Serious Earth or anything like that. This is going to be a 5-episode miniseries detailing the lives of various inmates in the asylum. I thought this would be an interesting way to showcase the rest of Batman's rogue gallery without necessarily showing them fighting Batman. It would showcase the lives of the various inmates and the inner machinations of how the famous asylum works in detail, whether they actually help their patients or not, or if it's just a dumping ground for the worst of the worst. It can even show in a very weird and twisted way almost them as victims, and the hatred for Batman grows and grows because they're stuck there. I think that would be quite interesting. The showrunner would be Sam Esmail. Next up is Batgirl. In between seasons 2 and 3 of the Bat family, Batgirl has her solo adventure when she fights D-list Batman villains, Firefly and the Electrocutioner, who were featured in Arkham Asylum. It's a very simplistic plot that would eventually turn into a maze of twists and turns, and Batgirl originally thinking that there's something more to fighting these two weird villains. It would be written by Scott Snyder and directed by Kathy Yan. Next up is Superboy. This involves a quick origin story for Superboy in the very beginning, where it's told from Superman's perspective, and has Superboy escaping Cadmus and wreaking havoc. Superman eventually manages to defeat him and sees that he is part Kryptonian. It's because of this that Superman sort of adopts him and wants to train him. Fast forward a couple years later, and Superboy has become a full-fledged hero, stopping various threats. However, Cadmus eventually tracks him down and sends John Corbin, aka Metallo, after him to defeat him. This would be written and directed by Duncan Jones. Next is Adam Strange. Very similar to the Legion of Superheroes, Adam Strange would have a very Silver Age feel to it, and would be the epitome of a very fun space adventure. Think of a modern Flash Gordon in a way. With this, there wouldn't be a main big bad, it would almost be an anthology film of Strange fighting various threats across the galaxy. This would be written and directed by Brad Bird. Next is The Resurrection Man. So this show would be similar to something along the lines of The Incredible Hulk in terms of a drifter moving from place to place with no real purpose fighting evil. There would be a bit more bite to it in terms of what Resurrection Man fights. It could be a well-known supervillain or as simple as helping people around a small town. Each episode would showcase a different power and how he uses it to help people, or him needing to kill himself to find a power that could be useful. I think that would be an intriguing concept. The showrunner would be Chris Carter. Next is Birds of Prey, a 4-episode miniseries that would follow the formation of the Birds of Prey, with each episode following a different member from their perspective. The story is the Birds of Prey attempting to stop the mayor of Gotham to try and rule over Gotham City in a totalitarian-type state, with the help of various supervillains who would keep the population complacent and none the wiser, in exchange for a part of the city and immunity for all villains involved. It would be very similar to a film noir, but with a bit more action. The showrunner would be Lisa Joy. Next is Revenge of the Red Hood. This one is simple. It would be an adaptation of the Under the Red Hood storyline. It wouldn't be an official Batman movie, it would be more so focused on Jason Todd's journey to becoming Red Hood and him butting heads with Batman. Everything in the original story would be featured here, even the Joker. This would be written and directed by S. Craig Zahler. Next is Superman 3, The Elite. Yet another adaptation, and this time it's What's So Funny About Truth, Justice, and the American Way. If you don't know the story, it's about Superman butting heads with a group of anti-heroes who think Superman's morals and hopeful optimism are dated and a thing of the past. It's kind of one of those movies that could really work, especially right now, where everyone thinks that Superman can't work in this day and age. This would be the movie that surely proves that Superman will be timeless and why we as the audience will always need him, as well as being a good companion piece to Revenge of the Red Hood, as that film is about how Batman's morals and how he works are very dated, and how Red Hood is trying to expose that, while Superman 3 is about how Superman's views and morals will always be timeless. I think that would be really interesting. Superman 3 would be directed and written by J.A. Bayona. Finally, for Phase 5 is Justice League 5. In this film, the Justice League finally fights Darkseid. This wouldn't feature every single hero, but it would include a lot of them. This would be the ultimate confrontation that has been building up through every Justice League movie, and would be the ending for pretty much the main era of the DCEU. While it would continue on, it wouldn't be the same and would pretty much be smaller connected movies until it finally does end, eventually. This film would once again be written and directed by Christopher McQuarrie. So, that's it for Phase 5. Next up is going to be Phase 5 casting, obviously.